Well, today we're going to talk about water cooling. Not with all the drama going on, but we're going to talk about something new from Corsair. It's actually been a while since they've put together like a all-in-one box kit, if you will, to make it easier for the layman or the first timer or just the simplifier to want to have everything they need in one box to water cool their system. So today we're going to unbox it, we're going to look at it, and the model number on this is the XH405i RGB Elite Water Cooling Kit. CableMod's new StealthSense technology effectively eliminates the need for sense wires for your 40 series GPU. StealthSense features a hidden bridge which signals the GPU that a full 600 watts is available, all without the need for fragile sense wires that can easily be dislodged, leading to a black screen and 100% fans. To see the full spec list and power supplies supported, follow the link in the description below. So we're going to unbox this together. It's been a bit since I've done one of these kits, and obviously because of their iCUE Link stuff, which we'll talk about here in a sec, but the iCUE Link stuff's supposed to really make it more simplified. Oh, it is literally a box in a box. Okay, so as you can see, it basically has everything that you're going to need in there. Let's talk about the iCUE Link stuff real quick. There's been a bug that's gone around, that's kind of made the rounds, where I guess a lot of the RGB was not working. It was just like flashing a red LED or whatever. I specifically waited to talk about this until that bug was sorted. So by the time this video has gone out, there should have already been an update that's gone live that addresses all of the controllers that needed firmware updates and such. So I just want to point that out, that make sure that everything seems to be kosher regarding the community, regarding the iCUE Link stuff, but that's kind of unfortunately sort of what you deal with when you have a whole new family and ecosystem of product. Sometimes some of these kinks and bugs have to be worked out. One of the things that I had as a major complaint about the previous iCUE Hydro X stuff was the fact that it didn't all fully integrate. So I'm really hoping that that's what we get this time around. But we're gonna find out right now. So products that you get, and we'll just kind of go real quick on the box. We get a CPU block, pump res combo, radiator, QX120 RGB fans, 4-way splitter and hub. We actually get hardline tools and stuff. So that's cool. This is a hardline kit, obviously. It's a 0.5 millimeter, or it's 0.5 millimeter. Wow, that'd be a really short tube. It's a 0.5 meter tubes. 10 by 14. My only concern about the length of these tubes is if you're trying to do like a long single run, you're not going to be able to necessarily do that. So depending on the size of your case and the length of the run you're trying to do, you might end up having an issue regarding getting from one component to the other. I feel like they should have made this box longer and longer tubes for that reason. But anyway, we get the XF hardline 14 millimeter fittings. And then we get some 90-degree rotor adapters. We get 2 of those, which is kind of nice. That helps with some, bend limitations there, and so making it shorter, to have another pipe make a double 90 or something. The one thing it doesn't have is couplers. So if you have to have a longer run to put 2 tubes together and have a coupler, it doesn't come with any of that. So you'll have to source that on your own. But this is one of the first kits that I know of that allow a person to go right into hardline water tube bending, and has everything that you essentially are gonna need with the exception of a heat gun. You're gonna need a heat gun for that. Now the radiator, this is the XR5 360. We have a ton of these out in the warehouse. Nothing changed with this. It's a full copper radiator. It's a 360 millimeter long. Actually, it's a total of 398 millimeters long, including the end tanks. But then it's a 30 millimeter thick rad. So pretty standard, good enough for a CPU and a GPU that are running like stock speeds or not overclocked. I wouldn't use a 360 on, say, a 99 and a 4090. That's a lot of heat you're asking for a single 360 to cool, but you can, of course, add more to this kit if you want to. If you want to add another radiator, you'd have to buy another radiator and 2 more fittings at minimum to be able to add another component to your set. Same thing with a GPU block. If you want to add a GPU block, anytime you add a component, add 2 fittings for that as well, because you need fittings for those components. Here's the tubing right here. I want to see, is it the clear or the frosted tubing? They're more than likely using PMMA. That's what Corsair uses for their tubes. I love the PMMA. It bends really tight without crushing. And it takes more heat to bend. It's still acrylic, but there's something different about PMMA than just standard acrylic. And you can get it in frosted, although these are just straight up clear tubes. So as you can see, they are clear, which of course always has a nice look to it. And then depending on the color fluid you go with, this does include fluid, which is going to be clear, but you can add specialty dyes and stuff to those fluids that are not food coloring, by the way. Never use food coloring in your loop. Food coloring will make growth because it's food. grade stuff. And guess what else loves food grade stuff? Bacteria, microbials, all sorts of other things. So we get a total of 6 of these 1/2 meter long tubes. I highly recommend you buy extra, especially if you've never done bends before. 6 seems like a lot. It's not. Get extra. This is our 3-pack of the QX120 RGB fans. Let's take a look at these real quick. Nothing's really changed with these regarding the fact that they've been selling these independently for a while now. It's just nice to see it coming in a kit. They do magnetically link together. They daisy chain, which is what the whole point of link is when it comes to Corsair. And it's going to allow us to have less wires, less clutter, which is never a bad thing. So it's just a pretty standard off-the-shelf 3-pack put into a box. You can see right here, they're even already connected, but they literally they have these little, what you would call these, but they're just little adapters, little jumpers. It's like a big version of like a BIOS reset jumper on a motherboard, but it carries the full signal because of the fact that these are dealing with 12 volt power and not 5 volt power. Means you can have a lot more devices on a single line, including powering the fans, including all the ARGB and all the communication you need to make the RGB do all the effects and stuff that you want. 12 volts necessary, 5 volt would not get the job done. So I like the fact that Corsair went with 12 volt. Something else you may not have noticed on their fans, they do have a temperature sensor on each fan. So you can, using the iCUE software, have various fans in your setup speed up and slow down based on temperature. What is amazing about that is the fact that you could, for the first time, balance intake and exhaust fans based on temperature. So if you notice that the exhaust is starting to get warm because of the temperature going through the fans is giving you the temperature coming through the fan is exactly like the hottest temperature in the case, essentially, because it's being exhausted, right? That's gonna tell you where the most of the heat is and what that heat temperature is. So if you notice your exhaust fans temps are going up, you can then speed up the intake fans. And you can also speed up the exhaust fans too if you want. And you can do that based on the fan temperature, GPU temperatures, load, all that stuff is a part of the iCUE system, which Corsair's put a lot of work in over the years. The problem with like RGB and built-in software and stuff is the fact that it's become there's so many different ones, right? But this is an ecosystem, and that's one of the reasons why when you talk about iCUE, it's important to know that the only way you're gonna get full control over these devices is to use iCUE. And this, as you can see, comes with the new mini hub. This hub right here has a power port, it has a communication port, and then it even has it looks like a temperature probe on here as well, that you can put a different temperature sensor somewhere in the case if you want. So the hub can also control the fans and pump speeds and such based on the amount of temperature being read even through that sensor. What I love about this, I don't have anything steel here to show you, but this is magnetic. You'll notice there's no mounting screws or anything for this. It literally just magnets to your case. If it's steel. If you have an aluminum chassis, you're gonna have to use some double-sided tape or something. And then you can see right here, it also does come with a few of the fan headers already. We've got a 600 millimeter length of a 180 and a 90, which is nice because let's say here's your fans right here. All you have to do to get all of this wired up and hooked up, just plug that in. This other end goes into either another device or the hub. It is like a USB-C, so it works either direction. And those fans would now be completely wired in. So the wire's a little thick because there's a lot of wire that has to be in here in terms of handling all the RGB communication, all the power delivery, the grounds, any of the sensors and such, and the data cable. All of that here is kind of important. So that's why the cable's a little thick. And then we do have a little 90 degree to 90 degree. I think this is like a 100 millimeter or something like that, maybe a 150 millimeter. I think it's a 150 millimeter jumper cable. So this could then, let's say you had another fan, like you had 2 at the top and 1 on the back of your case. You could connect them together, like such. So it simplifies wiring. This is nothing new. We talked about this well over a year ago, about a year ago, I guess. I love the simplicity of what it provides because my biggest complaint, and I love that this is kind of a result of so many people like myself and the community complaining about the clutter of RGB fan systems, is you had a fan wire, which was like for the fan itself, the 4-pin PWM plug, as well as an RGB cable for every fan.
If you had, say, 11 fans in your system like mine does, then you would end up having 22 wires coming off just for the fans. So this is just a 4-way splitter. This allows us to be able to split off the cables into multiple directions if you want. So you could have this splitter like more in the middle of your case, and then you could have like going to case fans, maybe a radiator, not the radiator, but the pump separately, RGB strip or something separately, and then you can go from the splitter to the hub like down here. So it just gives you another simplified point of contact to be able to have everything plug in and then go into the hub. So these are our compression fittings. They're 14 millimeter by 10 millimeter, which is the size of our tubing. They do have multiple O-rings inside, so they have 2 O-rings that are not only giving a compression fit, but also a seal, so nothing leaks. They're a semi-gloss sort of finish, kind of a matte, kind of a semi-gloss. So we have 8 of the compression fittings, and we have 2 of the 90s, so the 90s should be in here as well. Yep, there are the rotary 90s right there. So these really come in handy when it comes to like coming off the blocks and such. As you can see, it's really stiff, which is good. You can rotate that, it's called a rotary fitting. I like when they are stiff because sometimes they want to sag. If they're not stiff, they sag, and then they don't stay where you put them. So I like it to be nice and stiff and stay where I put it. So we got ourselves an XC7 RGB Elite block. I'm sure you guys are noticing, these are essentially just off-the-shelf parts that were put into a kit. But I love that because of the fact that it means it takes 95% of the guesswork out. Comes with another link cable right there, 90 degree on one side and 180 on the other. We've got our Intel retention bracket, also have our AMD brackets in there as well. And then this is also an iCUE link device, but it still does not daisy chain, which I was really hoping that they would have maybe implemented. Oh well, we have our input right here for our lighting. This does nothing but bring lighting to this. Like the cable, this is no, it's just a pump or block. It's not a pump or anything. So there's no data signal, there's no temperature sensor or anything in here as far as I can tell. It's still highly disappointing though that this is not a daisy chainable part, because that, to me, is one of the biggest selling factors of Link, is when they link. All right, so this is the XD5 RGB Elite pump, exactly the same as we had before. Comes with the mounting bracket and everything. It's kind of a gunmetal color. There's 22 RGBs in here. Is it 22? I think it's 22. Again, this also does not daisy chain, which is something I am going to nitpick on Corsair until they lament and finally make their Hydro X stuff daisy chainable. It's a pretty decent size unit. It's got a kind of a rubber protection on the acrylic right here, so that when you're putting it in, it's not getting all scratched up. So if it looks kind of cloudy, that's why there's a rubber, kind of like a little protective sleeve on there. So you can screw this down directly, like to say the bottom of a case if you wanted. And these mounts right here are rubberized. I don't know if you can tell, they wiggle a little bit. They are rubber, that's to stop any vibrations from the pump making its way into your chassis and then resonating. But there's our single link right there. Now this is kind of nice, at least for the pump. The pump not linking, I can sort of, or daisy chaining, I can sort of give a pass on, because this has to carry power, a significant amount of power for the pump, way more than fans do. And then that many RGBs, and then having the data circuit in here so you can speed up and slow down the pump based on speeds. This one I'm kind of okay with being a single plug, because of the fact that this is going to be eating up a lot of power off that line anyway. But it's still coming from the same spot anyway, which is that hub. Now that hub does directly connect to a connector right here, which plugs into PCI Express on your, like a 6-pin on your power supply, not SATA. So you're getting a better power source for this than you would through like the SATA line. So this can do a pretty good job at delivering the power that would be needed by, say, your water pump right here. Okay, what do we got left in here? We've got coolant. This is the XL8 performance coolant in clear. I've actually used this coolant in quite a few of our builds. I think Phil's build's even using it. It's a solid coolant. It's got anti-growth, it's got growth inhibitors built into it, so you're not gonna get algae growth and stuff in there, which keeps the pH where it needs to be. It's also got anti-corrosive, even though all of our parts right here are pretty much either copper or nickel plated. There's nothing aluminum, so galvanic corrosion should not be a problem. I've never had any of my systems that are running this formula gunk up or have any weird floaties or anything falling out, or even the clear changing color. Sometimes clear stuff changes color when it picks up solder flux from the radiators or other components that are having some sort of a reaction. So I've never had that happen with any of our super chilled coolant. And then the last thing in here should be our toolkit. Oh, and you get a squeeze bottle filler. That's nice. You'd be surprised how long I went without using one of these. And then once I did, it's like, it changed everything. Although I think everything for me now is gonna be vacuum filled, to be honest, after we did that. Are you ready for me to fill the system?
Yeah.
Filled. But this still makes it really nice, especially if your reservoir is like, let's say it's up near the top of the case and you can't get anything in there to pour, you can just put this in there and be like. And if we take a look at the tools, same exact standard off-the-shelf toolkit they already sell, which has a bender, a vise for cutting the tubing, and then of course a hacksaw and a deburr bit and a mandrel for getting crush-free bends. The thing about bending tubing is if you don't put something inside of it, it doesn't matter if it's steel, like for exhaust systems, or plastic for anything else, if you don't put something inside the tubing, when you bend it, it will just crush on itself. This, and it's a solid cord, I want to point that out. Sometimes they're hollow, and which can still give a little give, which means you get a little squish in the tubing. Because this is solid, means that when you bend the tubing, you'll get a nice circle through the entire bend. The interior diameter will and shape will maintain to be a circle. So there's our mandrel. There's some instructions if you want. Here, I still use this thing, believe it or not. You can put it on the edge like that. And then you can use this to sort of clamp the tubing in if you want. I wouldn't use these screws, honestly, because they can scratch and mar the plastic, which is all the tubing is acrylic. So if you try and put those in like that tight against the tubing, you'll scratch it. So I don't use those at all. I tend to just put my hand on it like that, holding the tubing, and then cut. Speaking of cutting, here is our hacksaw. Not too much to say about that. This 90-degree bender, I don't tend to use this, but this allows you to have stops. And what I mean by that is you can push the tubing down in there. And if you know where you need the bend to be, you could put the stopper in there, push the tubing down to where it stops, heat it up, and then you can bend it along here. So you can, and there's markings on there to show you 45s, 90, whatever that is, and then whatever that is. So I forget the ink. And so it's kind of nice because it allows you to be able to get perfect 90-degree bends if you want. I do it the old school method where I just hold it up to the corner of the table and I make 90s based off that. But if you wanted to do it like this, you absolutely can, and this tool is available to you for doing that. Then we've got our deburr tool, which has both an internal deburr and an external deburr, or an outer deburr, where once you cut, you're gonna have jaggies. So you take the pointed one inside the tube and you kind of go back and forth with it, it'll smooth that out. Take the outside one on the outside of the tube. I won't do this on my finger, it would really hurt because those are blades. And then you just go back and forth on the outside and it gets rid of any of that. That way when you push the tube into your fitting, you don't slice your O-ring. Slicing the O-ring would lead to a very bad day. So that's it, that's everything in the box, except for the squeezy bottle, which I threw back in there. Got some paper crap. This might be, I think, one of the first hardline tube kits I've seen in the market, which is nice because if I'm thinking about this right now, with the amount of builds I've done, what's the thing people tend to mess up on the most? Fitting compatibility, sizes, making sure they have the right size fittings to work with the right size tubing that they have. If I had to make any sort of adjustment to this kit, it would probably be what I already said, which would be to make sure that you have enough tubing. And I think that I would go with more tubing than what they gave you. And that's only because of the fact that they have to, I think for shipping reasons, the box needed to be shorter, which is why you're not getting 1 meter long links, which you can get online. Tubing's not expensive. Like Corsair sells 1 meter long tubing, you can get it on Amazon. I get a lot of my tubing from Amazon. So I would definitely recommend that you get more tubing. Practice on some spare tubing or something, or an extra piece to just kind of get used to the temperature it needs to be at. That tends to be the #1 thing people mess up on when it comes to their tubing bending, is they don't get the temperature right. So they're trying to bend it when it's too cold. That will cause it to kink. Or they're trying, I can never rebox things. or they get it too hot and then it blisters. So that's why I recommend practicing on a spare piece of tube. That way you get the idea of what when you know the temperature is right for it. Now the nice thing about the Link stuff is the fact that it's pretty freaking simple in terms of wiring this thing up. Like I said, I'm not too much of a fan of the fact that the only thing that's necessarily going to be daisy chained in all of this setup is going to be the fans. Nothing else has a daisy chain aspect to it. But you know what? This is still going to make things a hell of a lot more simple and clean because of the fact that you can have one wire coming off of each device. And if you do add more fans to your system, you can daisy chain them off the fans like I already showed. But if you have top fans and then say motherboard wall fans or something like that, then you would probably end up needing more cables and more adapters. They do give you the 4-way adapter, which is a nice plus. I'll just show that real quick. It's pretty simple. This is not a smart device, it's just a hub. So the hub, as you can see, gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, and then an input. So you do get 4 additional leads off of this. And then if you wanted to, you could have more than one hub in there if you wanted to for whatever reason. Multiple hubs do get recognized in iCUE, allowing you to control them independently of each other. So I really like seeing this because as someone that wants to bring a lot of people's concerns around water cooling to a realistic, manageable state of anxiety, because putting coolant in a computer for most people leads to a lot of anxiety. And I've seen a lot of people already commenting on any of my videos where I talk about water cooling. They're like, why would you do that? Why would you put liquid in your computer? That seems like a terrible idea. It's generally safe. It is generally safe. And as you have products like this, which are designed to make sure that things are working compatible-wise with each other and as best opportunity as possible to not have a mistake happen, I'm all for that. This is a very good start, and it's expandable because of the fact that they do have their CPU blocks as well as other water blocks and stuff. Now I'm waiting to see what they come out with for like newer GPU stuff because I'm still not a fan of their hybrid blocks. We've covered that, but they have made very good full cover blocks in the past. And I'm waiting to see those make their way over to the Link product line. But I think with how many SKUs you have to cover with the amount of blocks that there would have to be for all the GPUs that there are, that takes time, right? And it has to be something that makes sense business-wise for them to say, we're gonna cover all these products or SKUs for graphics cards. And sometimes it just doesn't. So anyway, you might have to have a graphics card GPU block not hooked up to Link for the time being using a standard ARGB header or something, which iCUE can still control through SDKs and stuff that are available for making sure other products are controlled with iCUE. There is a kind of a collaboration happening there. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Does this kit make you more comfortable at, that's like everything right there. Look at that. Minus the tools, that's like everything. Does this kit make you more comfortable at trying water cooling, especially rigid tube cooling? You could do the very same thing with soft tubing. And I'd be surprised if they didn't also have a soft tubing kit available. But I like that this is the first kit I know of, personally, that addresses hardline tubing for the beginner to try and give you everything you need in one box. All right, guys, links are down below. Once again, a huge thanks to Corsair for sending this over for us to take a look at. You guys are looking for alternatives with everything going on right now, so here's one of them. All right, thanks for watching, guys, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.